So, this is my first time posting here. I don't even know if I'm overreacting or just paranoid. My wife, let's call her Emily, started taking an Uber to work about 6 months ago because our car broke down, and I've been saving up to get a new one. At first, it seemed like no big deal. I mean, people use rideshares all the time, right? But after a while, I noticed she was always talking about her driver. Let's call him Tom. She'd come home and say stuff like, "Tom was hilarious today," or "Tom gave me the best route to avoid traffic." It felt innocent enough, so I didn't think much of it. But then she started taking this specific driver every single day. I mean, every day. She even started saying things like, "Tom's so reliable. I trust him more than other drivers." I figured it was just a routine thing, but then she started going out more. "Just meeting friends," she'd say. "Girls' night," she'd explain. But the weird thing is, she'd always have Tom drop her off or pick her up. I know what you're thinking, maybe I'm just insecure or something. But recently she's been super weird about her phone too. She used to leave it lying around, and I could grab it to check a text or whatever, no problem. Now, it's glued to her. Even in the bathroom. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but there's this sinking feeling in my gut. I asked her about Tom a few times, and she just brushed it off, saying I was being jealous and ridiculous. She laughed it off, saying it was cute, that I was getting all possessive. She's still saying it's nothing, but something doesn't feel right. I don't know, Reddit. Am I crazy? Should I ask her directly, or am I just being paranoid? Alright, so I took a lot of your advice from the last post and decided to have a real conversation with Emily. I asked her straight up, "Is there something going on with you and Tom?" She just rolled her eyes and acted like I was insane. "Tom? Are you serious? He's just my driver," she said. Then she went off about how I'm being overly dramatic and need to get a grip. She kept calling me insecure and jealous. But here's the thing. The other night she said she was going out for drinks with her friends again. Same story as usual. But this time, I decided to check up on her. I know, it sounds bad. I shouldn't have, but my gut was screaming at me. I checked her location on my phone. Yeah, we have that Find My Phone thing for emergencies. She was supposed to be at this bar across town with her friends, but her location showed her at some random parking lot near the outskirts of town. My heart dropped. I called her. No answer. Texted her. No reply. After about 30 minutes of radio silence, she finally called back, all giggly, saying she was just grabbing drinks, and that the bar must not have had good reception. I could hear loud music in the background, but something felt off. It didn't sound like a bar. I wanted to ask her what was really going on, but I felt like she just twisted around and make me look like the crazy one again. Later that night, she came home late, smelling like a mixture of cheap cologne and alcohol. She said her friend Katie gave her a ride home because Tom was busy. But the next morning, when she wasn't looking, I checked her phone. There were no texts from Katie. Actually, there were no texts from anyone about going out at all. What I did find, though, were a bunch of messages from Tom. Most of them seemed innocent enough at first. Just stuff like, "I'm outside," or "I'll pick you up at 7. But some of the other texts were, well, a little too friendly. "Tom, had a great time last night. You looked incredible in that dress, winky face. Emily. Haha, stop. You're gonna make me blush." There were even some late-night texts where she was saying she was bored and asking him to pick her up, even though I was asleep in the next room. I confronted her again, and she got all defensive. She swore they were just friends and that it was nothing, just a joke, apparently. She even had the nerve to say, "You need to trust me. Tom is just my ride." But I don't know, Reddit. The way she's been acting? This doesn't feel right at all. Am I just being paranoid again? Or is there something going on here? I'm seriously starting to lose my mind. So, after the whole texting debacle, I decided to dig a little deeper. I knew I couldn't just let this slide anymore. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that something was going on between Emily and Tom. I even started contemplating hiring a private investigator, but I wasn't sure if that was a step too far. To get more clarity, I thought maybe I could find out what was really going on by casually bumping into her at work. I asked for her schedule and feigned interest in meeting her for lunch one day. She agreed, but when I showed up, she looked shocked to see me. "What are you doing here?" she asked, a little too nervously. I tried to play it cool, saying I wanted to surprise her, but I noticed she was texting someone furiously under the table. When I asked who she was texting, she flipped it around and said, "Just my boss. You know how he can be." But the way she avoided eye contact made my heart race. Later that week, I decided to follow her after work. I felt terrible about it, but I couldn't take any more of her lies. I parked a couple of blocks away from her office and waited. When she finally emerged, she walked right to Tom's car, got in, and they drove off. My stomach twisted in knots as I followed them. They ended up at a restaurant, and I parked across the street, trying to stay hidden. My heart was pounding, and I felt like I was in some cheesy drama movie. They were laughing, sharing food, and leaning in close together. Emily looked radiant, and I couldn't help but feel sick at the sight of her being so relaxed with this guy while I was sitting in my car, watching it all unfold. After about an hour, I saw them leave the restaurant, but instead of heading back to her apartment, they drove to a nearby park. My heart sank as I saw them park and then noticed Tom lean in for a kiss. They kissed, hard, and then, it happened. I couldn't believe my eyes. They began to fumble in the back seat, and just like that, I knew they were having sex right there in the car. I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. I was frozen in shock, anger, and betrayal. The woman I loved was with another man, and I had been so naive to think it was nothing. The worst part? She looked so happy with him. I couldn't take it anymore and drove home, my mind racing with emotions. When I got back, I could barely look at her. She was already home, pretending like everything was normal. I wanted to confront her, but I was overwhelmed by the idea of her denying everything again, or worse, turning it around on me. The next morning, I knew I couldn't stay silent. It was time for a confrontation, and I was ready to get to the bottom of this once and for all. I needed to confront her about what I saw. But part of me wondered if maybe it was time to file for divorce. I couldn't sleep that night, and the weight of what I saw was suffocating. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, Emily and Tom, wrapped up in each other, oblivious to my world crumbling around them. I felt like a fool, and I was done being played. The next morning, I waited for Emily to wake up. My heart raced as I prepared for the confrontation. I knew I had to be calm and collected, even though every fiber of my being was screaming at me to explode. When she finally rolled out of bed, I could see her usual cheerful demeanor, an act I found increasingly infuriating. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure, what's up?" she replied, yawning and stretching as if nothing was wrong. I took a deep breath, deciding to just lay it all out. "I know about you and Tom. I saw you last night." Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought I saw panic flash in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" she said, her tone suddenly defensive. "You must be mistaken. I wasn't with Tom." I felt my blood boil. "Don't lie to me, Emily. I watched you two together, laughing, kissing, having sex in his car." The room went silent. Her expression shifted from denial to a bizarre mix of anger and desperation. "You're insane! You have no right to stalk me or accuse me like this. Tom is just a driver." "Just a driver?" I shot back. "You've been seeing him outside of work. You've been lying to me for months." She exploded, her voice rising. "You're just jealous. You don't trust me. You're the one with the problem." It felt like an emotional slap in the face. "Trust? You're the one betraying me. You think I wanted to follow you? I did it because I was worried about you. But now I know the truth. Emily's expression twisted into something almost vindictive. Maybe if you had paid more attention to me instead of being so absorbed in your own insecurities, I wouldn't have felt the need to find someone else. Her words cut deep, and I could feel my resolve hardening. So this is what it's come to? You'd rather blame me than own up to your choices? This isn't just about being unhappy in our marriage. You chose to cheat on me. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. We weren't even having sex. You're just looking for a reason to break us apart. That was it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you're telling me that what I saw was nothing? You're just going to lie straight to my face after everything? Her demeanor shifted again, becoming frantic. You need to calm down. You're overreacting. I can't believe you would confront me like this. You've ruined everything. I shook my head, feeling the weight of every word. No, Emily. You've ruined everything. I can't keep pretending this is a real marriage. I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, I thought she might actually fight for it. But instead, she burst into tears, sobbing hysterically. You can't just throw everything away. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Seeing her in such distress was almost surreal. You made your choices, Emily. I won't be a part of this charade anymore. As she continued to cry and lash out, I felt an odd sense of relief wash over me. I had finally taken a stand. But with it came the uncertainty of what lay ahead. I was stepping into the unknown, and it terrified me. After I dropped the bombshell about the divorce, the atmosphere in our apartment felt charged with tension. Emily was a whirlwind of emotions, swinging from anger to tears, and it was hard to believe this was the same woman I had once loved so deeply. I watched as she frantically wiped her tears, desperate to salvage whatever she could from the wreckage of our relationship. You don't really mean it, she pleaded, her voice cracking. We can work this out. I'll end things with Tom, I swear. Just give me another chance. I stared at her, feeling a mix of pity and anger. You had your chances, Emily. You made your choices, and this isn't just about Tom. It's about the lies, the betrayal, everything. You've hurt me too deeply. She moved closer, desperation etched across her face. Please, let's just talk about this. We can fix it. I love you. Her words felt empty, like a last-ditch effort to cling to something that had already slipped through her fingers. Love? You've been lying and sneaking around with another man. You can't just wave your hands and pretend it didn't happen. I could see her mind racing as she tried to piece together a defense. I was just looking for something exciting. You've been so focused on work and your studies that I felt neglected. Tom was just fun. I shook my head, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Fun? So you thought cheating would solve your problems? You thought lying to me was okay as long as it was fun? You don't get to redefine this. She stepped back, her eyes flashing with indignation. You're such a hypocrite. You've been so wrapped up in your own world that I felt invisible. You don't know what it's like to feel alone in a marriage. I felt my heart pounding. You think I wanted to ignore you? You think I wanted this? You chose to betray me instead of talking about how you felt. This is on you. The conversation spiraled into a shouting match, each of us hurling accusations and regrets at one another. But deep down, I felt an unsettling calm. I knew this was the end, and I had to stand my ground. Finally, I turned to leave the room, needing some space to think. Emily's voice followed me, frantic and high-pitched. You can't just walk away. We need to sort this out. I won't let you leave. As I shut the bedroom door behind me, I could hear her sobbing on the other side. It felt surreal. The woman I once thought I'd spend my life with was now just a stranger, someone I couldn't trust. I pulled out my phone and started researching divorce lawyers. My heart ached at the thought of taking this step, but I felt more alive than I had in months. The weight of her betrayal was heavy, but I was finally taking control of my own life. Hours passed, and I could hear Emily moving around the apartment, her footsteps heavy with resignation. Part of me wondered if she was realizing the gravity of what had just happened. But the other part of me was just angry. Angry at her, angry at Tom, angry at the situation. Eventually, she knocked on the door. "Can we talk? Please?" I opened it, and she stood there, eyes red and puffy, but somehow still demanding. "What's going to happen now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now?" I replied. "I'm filing for divorce. I'm done with this. I need to move on." Her face crumbled again, but I could see a flicker of something else, maybe regret, maybe fear. "You're really going to do this? After everything?" "Yes. I can't stay in a relationship built on lies and deceit. I deserve better." Her reaction was a mixture of despair and rage, and I realized there was no going back. She was losing her grip, and it felt like a part of me was breaking, too. But I had to be strong. As I watched her walk away, sobbing into her hands, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. This was the beginning of the end, and I knew I had to brace myself for what was to come. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I spent most of my time in a daze, alternating between anger, sadness, and a sense of newfound freedom. I was finally doing something for myself, but the weight of the impending divorce loomed over me like a dark cloud. I met with a divorce lawyer the following week. She was a no-nonsense woman who wasted no time laying out the process and what to expect. "Divorce is messy, especially when emotions are involved," she said, her tone firm but empathetic. "But you need to be prepared for a fight, especially if there's property involved." I nodded, feeling the reality sink in. I hadn't really thought about our shared finances or the apartment we'd decorated together. I was focused on the emotional aspect, but now it felt like I was stepping into a battlefield. I signed the initial paperwork, my heart heavy but resolute. Back home, things were tense. Emily and I avoided each other as much as possible, and when we did interact, it was awkward and filled with resentment. She tried to convince me to think things through and give us another chance, but I stood my ground. I couldn't let her manipulation work on me again. One evening, after an especially cold exchange, I found her sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. It was the first time I'd seen her without her usual facade of bravado. "Do you really think this is the right choice?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. You chose to betray my trust. I can't just forget that." Her eyes glistened with tears. "But I can change. I'll do anything." "No, Emily. You had your chance. You made your choices." I felt the anger rising again. "I can't trust you anymore. This isn't just about me, it's about us. This is what you wanted." She shook her head, frustration evident in her posture. "I didn't want to hurt you. It was a mistake. Can't you see that?" I couldn't believe we were having this conversation. "A mistake? You don't just accidentally cheat on someone. That's a choice, Emily. A series of choices. And now we have to face the consequences." She slumped back against the couch, her expression shifting from desperation to anger. "You're being so unreasonable. You're throwing away everything we built together." My patience wore thin. "You're the one who threw it all away. I can't believe you're trying to twist this around on me. I deserve better than this." With that, I walked away, leaving her to stew in her anger and regret. I needed to stay firm, but it was hard not to feel the sting of her words. Deep down, I wondered if I was making the right decision. But every time I thought about the betrayal, I felt my resolve strengthen. Days turned into weeks, and the divorce process dragged on. I spent my evenings poring over legal documents, figuring out what I needed to do to protect myself. Emily continued to push for reconciliation, but my heart had already begun to heal, albeit slowly. Then, one day, I received a message from Tom. It was unexpected and felt like a slap in the face. "Hey, I just wanted to check in on you and Emily. I hope you're doing okay." I stared at the message, furious that he had the audacity to reach out to me. I felt the familiar rush of anger boiling inside me. What was this guy's game? Did he think he could just act like nothing happened? I debated responding but ultimately decided against it. I didn't want to open that door. Instead, I confronted Emily again. Why is Tom reaching out to me? Her face flushed with embarrassment. I don't know. Maybe he feels guilty? You have to believe me, I'm done with him. I swear. Why should I believe anything you say? You've lied to me before. She fell silent, clearly rattled. I can't change the past, but I'm trying to change my future. Please, just give me time. But I shook my head. I've already made my decision. You need to start accepting that this is happening. As the divorce process continued, I began to feel a sense of relief. I was finally reclaiming my life, step by step. Yet part of me still mourned the loss of what could have been. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I was determined to keep moving forward. As the divorce proceedings kicked into full gear, I braced myself for the emotional roller coaster that lay ahead. My lawyer was efficient, and the paperwork flowed in like a torrent. I was grateful to have someone guiding me through this, but each signature felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Emily was still trying to convince me to reconsider, throwing out desperate pleas about our life together and all the memories we shared. It was exhausting, but I remained firm in my decision. I needed to stay focused on what was best for me moving forward. The day of the first court hearing arrived, and my stomach churned with anxiety. I didn't know what to expect, and I felt unprepared for the emotional fallout that would inevitably come. As we sat in the waiting area, I caught a glimpse of Emily across the room. She looked disheveled and pale, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But I quickly reminded myself of the betrayal and the pain she had caused me. When our names were called, I took a deep breath and walked into the courtroom. The judge was stern but fair, and she asked us both a series of questions about our relationship and the circumstances surrounding the divorce. I spoke honestly about the infidelity, feeling a mix of anger and vulnerability as I recounted how Emily had deceived me. At one point, the judge turned to Emily, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she prepared to spin her version of the story. I understand that this is a difficult situation, she began, her voice shaky but determined. But I want to emphasize that my actions stemmed from feeling neglected in the marriage. I never intended to hurt my husband. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. That's not true. You chose to cheat instead of communicating. That's a choice, not a reaction to feeling neglected. The judge raised her hand, urging us both to calm down. This isn't the time for accusations. I need to hear both sides without interruption. The hearing went on, and I could feel the tension building as Emily continued to play the victim. I wanted to scream that she was the one who had betrayed our vows, but I held my tongue, knowing it wouldn't help my case. After what felt like hours, the judge declared a recess. I stepped outside to catch my breath, the weight of the proceedings hitting me like a wave. As I leaned against the wall, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Emily. Can we talk? She asked, her voice a mix of desperation and defiance. I narrowed my eyes, not wanting to engage. What's there to talk about? You made your choices. Please, just listen to me. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. I don't want this to be the end. My heart twisted with conflicting emotions. I still loved her, but I couldn't ignore the truth of her betrayal. It's too late for that, Emily. I can't go back to pretending everything is okay. You've hurt me in ways I can't just forget. She looked pained, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty for being so harsh. But then I remembered the pain in the lies, and my resolve hardened. You need to accept that this is happening. I'm moving on, and you should too. We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavily in the air. Finally, I turned to walk away, needing to gather my thoughts before the next session. As I headed back into the courtroom, I noticed a few familiar faces, friends and family who had come to support me. Seeing them gave me a surge of strength. They had been there for me through this turmoil, and I was grateful to have them in my corner. The rest of the hearing continued, and the judge ultimately decided to grant the divorce, but there would be a follow-up hearing for financial discussions. The relief washed over me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. As I left the courtroom, I felt a mix of liberation and heartache. I was finally free from the chains of betrayal, but the emotional toll weighed heavily on me. I needed time to heal, but I was ready to embrace the next chapter of my life. The divorce was finalized, but the emotional fallout continued to linger like a fog. I spent the next few weeks trying to find my footing, establishing a routine that didn't involve Emily's chaotic presence. I moved to a small, one-bedroom apartment that felt strange but liberating. It was mine, no memories of late-night arguments or whispered betrayals. At first, it felt surreal. I'd come home after a long day and have to remind myself that I was free to live without the weight of my former life. I started filling the space with my own things, pictures of friends, books I loved, and plants that thrived on my limited attention. It became a sanctuary where I could process everything that had happened. But even in my newfound freedom, moments of doubt crept in. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, haunted by memories of Emily's laughter or the way she'd smile when she thought no one was watching. It was infuriating to realize how deeply I had loved her, even after everything that had transpired. To combat the loneliness, I began reaching out to friends more. One Saturday, I met up with a close friend, Sarah, who had been my rock throughout the divorce. Over coffee, she listened patiently as I poured out my feelings, recounting the ups and downs of the process. "I just don't know if I'll ever trust again," I admitted, staring into my mug. "It's like a part of me is broken." Sarah reached across the table, her expression empathetic. "Trust takes time to rebuild, especially after something so traumatic. But don't let Emily's choices dictate your future. You deserve happiness." Her words resonated with me, igniting a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in a while. I realized that I could start fresh. I could redefine what love meant for me, outside the shadow of my past. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I picked up new hobbies, learning to cook, getting back into biking, and even taking an art class. I surrounded myself with positivity, and slowly, I began to feel like my old self again, the one who had dreams and aspirations beyond marriage. One evening, while biking through the park, I noticed a woman sketching under a tree. She was deeply focused, her pencil moving fluidly across the paper. There was something captivating about her concentration, and I found myself stopping to watch. After a moment, she looked up and caught my eye. "Do you write often?" she asked, a friendly smile breaking across her face. I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Yeah, I love it. It helps clear my mind." We started chatting, and I learned her name was Mia. She was an art student who often sketched in the park for inspiration. Our conversation flowed easily, and I found myself laughing again, a sound I hadn't heard in a long time. As we spoke, I felt a spark of something new, a connection I hadn't anticipated. It felt good to share my thoughts with someone who had no baggage from my past. I exchanged contact information with Mia, and we agreed to meet again the following week. That night, I lay in bed reflecting on our encounter. I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Could I really be ready to open myself up to someone new? But as I thought about how far I'd come since the divorce, I realized that life was too short to be held captive by fear. The following week, I met Mia again, and we explored the city together, visiting art galleries and sharing stories. It felt refreshing to connect with someone who didn't have a stake in my past. With every laugh and shared experience, I felt the weight of my old life slowly lifting. Despite the joy I was experiencing, I knew I had to tread carefully. The scars from my marriage still lingered, and I had to acknowledge the journey ahead. But for the first time since the divorce, I felt hopeful about what the future could hold. It was a new beginning, and I was finally ready to embrace it. As I continued to spend time with Mia, the initial excitement of new romance began to blossom into something deeper. She was vibrant, passionate, and refreshingly honest, qualities I found myself drawn to. Yet, with every date, a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminded me of my past. Was I ready to let someone in again? One evening, we were sitting on a park bench, watching the sunset, and Mia turned to me with curiosity in her eyes. "What's your story?" she asked, her tone gentle. "You seem like you've been through a lot." My heart raced. It was the first time someone had asked me about my past so directly since the divorce. I hesitated, torn between the urge to open up and the instinct to protect myself. But I felt a spark of trust forming with Mia, so I decided to share my experience. I was married for a few years, but it ended badly. My ex cheated on me, and it was, well, devastating. I confessed, feeling a lump form in my throat. I never saw it coming. I thought we were building a life together, and then everything shattered overnight. Mia listened intently, her expression serious but compassionate. "I'm so sorry you went through that," she said softly. "It must have been incredibly painful." "It was. I've been trying to pick up the pieces ever since," I continued, feeling the weight of those memories. "I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone again. I was scared of being hurt." She nodded, her eyes reflecting understanding. "It's completely normal to feel that way after what you've been through. But I want you to know that I'm not here to replace anyone. I just want to get to know you and support you however I can." Her words struck a chord deep within me. It was a reminder that not everyone would betray my trust, that there were still genuine connections to be found. I realized that I could take my time, and it was okay to embrace new experiences without the shadow of my past looming over me. As the weeks went on, our relationship flourished. Mia encouraged me to explore art and creativity, often inviting me to her sketching sessions in the park. I even tried my hand at drawing, much to my own surprise. The laughter and lightness I felt with her were infectious, making it easier to set aside my fears. But as I began to feel more secure in this new relationship, my past came crashing back in an unexpected way. One day, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Emily. She had shared a picture of herself with Tom, both of them smiling, looking as if they were living their best lives. The sight of them together felt like a punch to the gut. Memories flooded back, nights spent dreaming of our future, moments I thought were sacred now tainted by the reality of her betrayal. Anger flared within me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a wave of sadness. Why did it still hurt to see her move on? I took a moment to collect myself, reminding myself that my healing journey was ongoing. I couldn't let her choices dictate my feelings any longer. So I closed my laptop and took a deep breath, deciding it was time to talk to Mia about everything. That evening, as we walked through the city, I found the courage to bring it up. "Mia, something happened today that I need to share with you," I said, my heart racing. She looked concerned but attentive. "What is it?" "I saw a post from my ex. She's with Tom now, and it stirred up some old feelings I thought I had moved past," I confessed, feeling vulnerable. "It made me realize that even though I'm happy with you, there are still wounds that need healing." Mia stopped walking and faced me. "It's okay to feel that way. Healing isn't linear, it takes time. What's important is that you're here with me now, choosing to open up and share these feelings." Her understanding and support felt like a balm to my soul. It was the reassurance I needed to know I wasn't alone in this journey. "Thank you for being patient with me," I said, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. We continued our walk, and I felt lighter. The conversation helped me recognize that while the past still held some weight, I was actively choosing to embrace the present. That night, as we settled on the couch in my apartment, I looked at Mia and realized how far I'd come. I was still on a path of healing, but with her by my side, I felt ready to confront whatever came next. The walls I built around my heart were slowly crumbling, and I was finally allowing love to seep in again. With each passing day, my connection with Mia deepened. We continued to explore the city together, sharing laughter, dreams, and vulnerabilities. I found solace in her company, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope and excitement about the future. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip to the countryside. I wanted to show Mia the quaint little cabin my family used to visit when I was a child. It held so many memories, and I was eager to share that part of my life with her. The drive was filled with easy conversation and the kind of laughter that made time seem to fly. When we arrived, the serene beauty of the landscape took my breath away. The cabin stood proudly among the trees, surrounded by a picturesque view of rolling hills. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, mingling with a newfound joy at being able to share this place with someone I cared about. As we settled in, Mia pulled out her sketchbook. "I want to capture this moment," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I watched as she sketched the cabin and the surrounding scenery, her pencil gliding effortlessly across the page. It was mesmerizing to see her in her element. After she finished, we sat outside on the porch, the sun setting in vibrant hues of orange and pink. I turned to her, my heart full. "Thank you for being here with me. This place means a lot to me, and I'm glad I could share it with you." Mia smiled, her expression genuine. "I'm grateful you trusted me enough to share it. It's beautiful, just like you." Her words sent a warmth through me. It felt good to be appreciated and seen for who I truly was. In that moment, the shadows of my past faded away, replaced by the promise of a brighter future. Later that night, as we sat by the fire, I felt a wave of emotion swell within me. "Mia, I know this is still new for both of us, but I want you to know that I'm ready to take things further. I've been hurt before, but I'm willing to open my heart to you." Her eyes widened with surprise, and then she reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I feel the same way. I want us to explore what this could become. I know we both have scars, but I believe we can heal together." As the fire crackled, I leaned closer to her, our fingers intertwined. In that moment, it felt like the past no longer had power over me. I was no longer defined by Emily's betrayal or the hurt I had experienced. I was building something new, something real. The next few months flew by. I continued to navigate the complexities of my emotions while embracing this new chapter in my life. Mia became my confidant, my partner in adventure, and my source of encouragement. Together, we explored art galleries, attended concerts, and even took a pottery class that ended in laughter and a few failed attempts at making mugs. As the seasons changed, so did my outlook on love. I learned that it was okay to let go of the past and trust again, even if it felt daunting at times. Mia supported me through my healing, encouraging me to communicate openly about my fears and insecurities. One chilly evening, as we walked hand in hand through a park adorned with twinkling lights, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "I never imagined I could feel this way again," I admitted, looking into her eyes. "You've helped me see that love isn't just about what I lost but also about what I can gain." Mia smiled softly, brushing her fingers against my cheek. "Love is a journey, and I'm glad we're on this path together. We'll face whatever comes our way." With renewed determination, I allowed myself to envision a future filled with laughter, creativity, and love, one that was entirely mine, unburdened by the pain of betrayal. I realized that while scars would always remain, they didn't have to dictate my happiness. As we leaned in for a kiss, the world around us faded away, and I felt an overwhelming sense of hope. I was finally moving forward, and for the first time in a long while, I believed that I was ready to embrace whatever came next, hand in hand with Mia by my side.